For centuries, knowledge has been hidden in plain sight across the sands of time. Whispers of lost civilizations, cryptic symbols, and forbidden histories have been erased or concealed. What if the truth was never lost, but hidden? Welcome to Eye of Ancient Mysteries, where the past speaks and the future listens. Sit back, open your mind, and prepare to uncover the untold secrets of our world. Let the journey begin now. The salon was located in the wealthy part of the city, a place Kemp Hart rarely visited. It was far from his neighborhood, and he was surprised that he had wandered so far. In fact, he wouldn't have been out wandering aimlessly at all if the bartender at Bright Star hadn't refused to serve him on credit, leaving him no reason to stay with his usual company. He realized that once he became aware of where he was, he should have turned around immediately and left. This neighborhood of pompous publishers, gilded signs, and famous restaurants was not meant for him. But the display window had captured him and wouldn't let go. He stood in front of it in his tattered clothes, one hand in his pocket, holding his last 2 small coins between his fingers. Behind the glass, the machines gleamed in all their splendor. They were precisely the kind of goods that suited this luxurious, perfumed street. One machine in the corner of the display was larger and shinier than the rest, radiating an aura of competence. It had an enormous keyboard for inputting information and at least 100 slots for data reels and film strips. Its mood adjustment mechanism was calibrated far more precisely than any he had seen before. No doubt, it had many other qualities not immediately visible to the eye. Hart thought that with a machine like that, one could achieve fame almost automatically. Overnight, even. It would allow him to write anything he wanted, and with such mastery that even the most demanding publishers would open their doors for him. As much as he desired it, there was no point in going inside to take a closer look. It wouldn't change anything, not even if he just stood there thinking about it. That machine was something he could only afford to observe through the glass. And yet, he told himself, he had every right to step inside and take a look. Nothing was stopping him. Nothing, perhaps, except for the contemptuous smile of the salesman when he laid eyes on him. A look of silent, polite, and professionally restrained disdain that would appear the moment Hart turned his back. He glanced around cautiously and saw that the street was deserted. It was still too early for this area to be bustling, and Hart decided there was no reason not to go inside and ask to see the machine. Maybe if he explained that he wasn't looking to buy, but just to look, they wouldn't treat him with disdain. And surely they wouldn't refuse. After all, even the wealthy and famous must come in just to browse sometimes. He walked along the display window, still gazing at the machines, and made his way to the store's entrance. He kept repeating to himself that he shouldn't go in, that it was foolish to go in. But he knew he would do it anyway. He reached the door, opened it, and stepped inside. As if by magic, the salesman materialized beside him. "I'm interested in that fabulator in the corner," Hart said. Would I be able to? Of course, the salesman replied. Please follow me. When they reached the machine, the salesman ran his hand over it lovingly. This is our latest model, he explained. We call it the Classic because it was designed and built with a single purpose in mind, creating classics. In our opinion, it's far more advanced than our previous model, the Bestseller, which, in the end, was never expected to produce anything better than bestsellers. In fact, in some cases, it even churned out rather unremarkable classics. To be honest with you, sir, I suspect someone tampered with the machine. I've heard that some people are quite skilled at that sort of thing. I'm not one of them. Hart shook his head. When it comes to machinery, both of my hands might as well be left hands. In that case, this is the best fabulator you can find, the salesman said. When used skillfully, its capabilities are nearly limitless. This particular model has a much stronger quality factor than any of the others. Of course, to get the best results, you have to be careful when selecting the character films and plot reels. But there's no need to worry about that. We have an extensive selection, as well as some new setting modulators that are absolutely unique. Quite expensive, yes, but in return. Before I forget, how much does this model cost? Only $25,000, sir, the salesman said cheerfully. You're probably wondering why we're selling it at such a ridiculously low price. The amount of engineering that went into it is enormous. We worked on it for 10 years before we were satisfied with the results. Throughout that time, every component was continuously upgraded to keep pace with our latest research findings. The salesman patted the gleaming machine with pride. I guarantee, sir, that you won't find a better quality model anywhere. It contains millions of variations, ensuring the creation of truly original works. There's no risk of producing something formulaic, as often happens with cheaper models. The plot bank offers an almost unlimited number of scenarios on any topic, and the character bank contains thousands of prototypes, not just a few hundred like the earlier models. The semantic partitions allow for high selectivity and precision, not to mention. It's an impressive machine, no doubt, Hart interrupted, but it's a bit pricey. Do you have anything? Of course, sir. We have many other models to offer. Do you accept trade-ins? New machines for old ones with a price adjustment? Would be happy to, sir. What model do you have? Automatic Author Model 96. The salesman froze for a moment. His expression was a mixture of sorrow and astonishment. I'm not sure we could offer much for it, sir. That model is quite old, almost ancient. Well, you could at least offer something. I suppose we could, but it wouldn't be much. What about installment payments? Of course, sir. We can certainly arrange something. May I have your name? Hart gave his name. The salesman wrote it down and walked away. Please wait here for a moment, sir. Hart watched as the salesman disappeared into the back. Then, like a nighttime thief, He quietly made his way to the door and slipped out onto the street. There was no point in waiting, no point at all in staying to hear the salesman return and say, "We're terribly sorry, sir. We're terribly sorry, sir, because we checked your bank account and found it empty. We checked our sales records and saw that in the past 6 months, you've only sold one short story. I made a mistake going for a walk." Hart thought bitterly. By the time he reached the center of the city, far from the dazzling storefront, he climbed 6 flights of stairs. The elevator was broken again. Behind a door labeled Irving Publishing, the secretary paused her manicure just long enough to point toward the office. "He's in there," she said. Ben Irving sat behind a massive desk buried under manuscripts and summaries. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, and he wore a visor to shield his eyes from the light. He always wore that visor, one of the little mysteries of the publishing house, since even in daylight, this shabby office never had enough light to blind a self-respecting bat. He looked up at Hart and blinked. "Good to see you, Kemp. Have a seat. What brings you here?" Hart sat down. "I wanted to ask what you thought of the last story I sent." "Are you still working on your book, Angela?" he asked. "I'm processing a few reels right now," she replied. "I need to do the same this afternoon. I need a main character for Irving's order, someone big and loud, but not completely clumsy. I guess I'll have to go scouting in the bars." "Even that isn't free anymore, Kemp," she said. "Even the least perceptive aliens have gotten savvy. Just the other day, I paid $20 to one, and he wasn't anything special. Still cheaper than buying pre-made films. True. But then you have to put in a lot more work. Blake brought the beers, and Hart placed the exact amount into his outstretched palm. "Try the new film's stock," Angela advised. "They say it's 40 times better than the old one. The contrast is stronger, and the panorama is improved. The subject appears more defined. You capture the subtle nuances of the character better, so to speak. It really helps make your characters more believable. I've already switched to it." "It must be expensive," he said. "Yeah, it's a bit pricey," she admitted. "I've got a few rolls of the old stock left. I guess I'll have to make do with those. I can lend you $50. He shook his head. "Thanks, Angela. I might bum a drink, a meal, or a cigarette off you, but I'd never take $50, knowing you're short on cash yourself. None of us are well off enough to lend that kind of money. I'd gladly give it to you. If you change your... Want another beer?" Hart interrupted. "Thanks, but I have work to do." "So do I," Hart said. He climbed the stairs to the 7th floor, walked down the hallway, and knocked on Jasper Hansen's door. "Just a moment," a voice called from inside. He waited for 3 minutes. Finally, a key rattled in the lock, and the door swung open. "Sorry for the delay," Jasper said. "You caught me right when I was entering data into the machine." Hart nodded. He understood. It was hard to interrupt the input process after spending hours organizing the data. The room was small and messy. In one corner stood the fabulator. an impressive machine, though not as sleek as the one on display in the store window. A typewriter sat on a cluttered desk, half buried under papers. A long bookshelf sagged under the weight of old, worn-out reference books. In another corner, brightly colored books were piled haphazardly. A cat slept on the unmade bed. On the kitchen counter, a bottle of alcohol and a loaf of bread sat forgotten. The sink overflowed with dirty dishes. "I heard you were taking a little break." "Jasper," Hart said. Jasper looked exhausted. "Yeah, I figured it would do me good." "I was wondering, Jasper, would you do me a favor?" "Sure." "What do you need?" "Can I use your fabulator while you're away?" "Well, Kemp, you see, mine's broken and I can't afford to fix it. But I've started a job, and if you let me use yours, I could make enough money in a week or two to get mine repaired." "Look, you know I'd do anything for you." "But I can't lend you the fabulator. I've been modifying it ever since I bought it. There's not a single original circuit left. No one but me can operate it. If anyone else tried, they might get electrocuted, or worse. But you could explain how it works." Hart said, his voice almost pleading. "It's really complicated. I've been tinkering with it for years." Hart forced a smile. "Well, sorry to bother you. I just thought." Jasper patted him on the shoulder. "Ask me for anything else. Whatever you need." "Thanks, but I can't think of anything," Hart said, heading for the door. "A drink?" "Not now." "Thanks." He climbed 2 more flights of stairs to his attic room. His door was never locked. There was nothing worth stealing. What did Jasper have that needed protecting? Hart sank into a rickety chair and stared at his fabulator. It was old, broken, and useless, and he hated it. But he knew he would have to work with it, no matter how pointless it seemed. It was all he had. He'd keep trying to fix it, talk to it, curse at it, and suffer through sleepless nights. Eventually, the machine would sputter back to life, churning out mediocre stories that no one wanted to buy. He got up and walked to the window. Far below, the river stretched out before him. 10 ships lined up at the dock, unloading endless rolls of paper to feed the ever-hungry printing presses. Beyond the river, a spaceship was taking off from the spaceport, leaving behind a trail of blue ion light. He watched it until it disappeared. Other ships stood poised on the launch pads, waiting for the signal. A switch flipped, a relay activated, a navigation tape inserted. That would send them home. They would plunge into the darkness, then into the strange realm where time and space blurred, defying the limits of light speed. Ships from countless stars had come to Earth for one thing, the only commodity it had to offer. He tore his gaze away from the spaceport and looked at the vast city sprawled before him. Nearby stood the rundown, peeling box, like buildings of his neighborhood. Far to the north, the gleaming towers and grand homes of the famous and powerful glittered. A world of science fiction, he thought. He lived in a science fiction world, but not the one Wells and Stapleton had envisioned. Their dreams were filled with distant voyages and galactic empires, with Earth's triumph and glory, things it had failed to achieve even after unlocking the cosmos. Now the clatter of printing presses drowned out the roar of rockets. The great march to the stars had been replaced by attic rooms and the constant fear that the machines would break, the tapes would wear out, the data would be flawed. He opened his desk drawers. Beneath the clutter in one of them, he found the camera. He rummaged a bit more and located a roll of film wrapped in aluminum foil. The protagonist needs to be a brute, he thought. That wouldn't be hard to find in the dockside bars, where spaceship crews drank away their wages. The first bar reeked of a group of spider, like creatures from Spica, and he left immediately. The second was packed with cat, like Dehibians, not what he was looking for. In the third, he found exactly what he needed. A dozen grim-faced humanoids from Calf. Big, rough creatures with extravagant clothing. They loved to waste money and indulge in wild celebrations. They crowded around a large circular table, banging their mugs and making life miserable for the overworked bartender. The place shook with their songs, frequently interrupted by loud arguments and laughter. Hart slipped into an empty booth and watched them. One, larger and roadier than the rest, wore red pants and a bright green shirt. Platinum necklaces with alien gemstones adorned his thick neck. His shaggy hair hadn't been cut in months, and his chin had a devilish point. His ears were slightly pointed. Not someone you'd want to start a fight with. Perfect, Hart thought. Hail do. He ordered a boca, the only alien drink he knew wouldn't kill him. He set up the camera, focused on the green shirt, and started recording. 15 minutes would be enough to capture his physique, personality, thought patterns, zickas if he had any, lifestyle, and likely reactions to different situations. It wouldn't have the depth of Angela's new film stock, but it would do for Irving's job. Then, suddenly, a hand grabbed the camera. Hart turned. The bartender loomed over him. So, you come here pretending to drink, but really you're making films, trying to ruin my establishment's reputation. And that's when the trouble began. Hart swiftly slipped out of the booth, keeping his eyes locked on the exit. If he was lucky, he might just make it out. But the bartender was a seasoned man and stuck out his foot. Hart tumbled onto his shoulders and rolled. He slid across the floor, crashed into a table, and took cover beneath it. The cafe men had risen to their feet, watching him. Their expressions made it clear they were hoping he'd crack his skull open. The bartender hurled the camera to the floor with all his might. It shattered with an unpleasant crunch. The film unraveled. The lens cracked. A spring shot out from somewhere, clattered, and continued to quiver on the floor. Hart tucked in his legs and crawled out from under the table. The cafe men began closing in, not attacking or threatening him, just forming an ever-tightening ring, blocking his path to the exit. He carefully took a few steps, but they kept closing the circle. Suddenly, in a desperate attempt to break free, he lunged at them. He roared, charged forward with his head down, and rammed into Green Shirt's stomach. He felt the cafe man tremble and stumble, and for a fraction of a second, It seemed like his escape might succeed. A hairy, muscular arm grabbed him and flung him to the ground. Someone kicked him. Another stepped on his fingers. A third lifted him and hurled him out the open door onto the street. He landed on his back, curling up, unable to catch his breath. He only managed to stop and rest once he reached the far side of the street. All 12 Kaffee men had gathered at the tavern's entrance, roaring with laughter. Some slapped their thighs, others clapped their comrades on the back. A few doubled over, shouting jeers and insults. Hart couldn't understand all their gestures, but the ones he did sent a chill through his veins. Cautiously, he got to his feet and assessed himself. He was bruised and his clothes were torn, but luckily, nothing seemed broken. He took a few limping steps. Then, to his surprise, he found he could still run. Behind him, the Kaffee men were still laughing, but it wasn't impossible that, at some point, they'd decide the fun was over and come after him, thirsty for blood. He kept running, ducking into a side street that twisted and turned before leading him to a square. Without even catching his breath, he crossed it and continued running. Finally, convinced he was safe, he sank onto the doorstep of a house to rest and take stock of the situation. It was a disaster. Not only had he failed to get the image he needed, but he'd also lost his camera, been humiliated, and barely escaped with his life. There was nothing he could do. In fact, he was lucky. He had no legal grounds to seek compensation. He had broken the law. Capturing an image without its original's permission was illegal. Well, let him get drunk. He deserves to have some fun. What about this? Angela nodded towards the bed. You already heard what the doctor said. He can't be helped. No one can help him. When he wakes up, if he wakes up, maybe he'll be able to explain what's wrong with him. But I don't count on that. He walked over to the bed and looked at the creature again. There was something repulsive and off, putting about it nothing human, but the suffering and the shabby appearance inevitably evoked pity. Maybe I should have left him on the street. I was about to leave, but when he started crying again, my heart wouldn't let me. And still, it seems like I made a mistake by taking him in. I didn't help him in any way. If I had left him there, maybe it would have been better for him. It's possible that now other aliens like him are looking for him. You did the right thing, Angela said. Don't start fighting windmills. She crossed the room and sat on a chair. Hart went to the window and stared grimly at the night panorama. What happened to you? She asked him. Nothing. What about your clothes? Look at yourself. I got thrown out of a bar where I tried to shoot a film. Without paying, of course. I had no money. I offered you $50. I know you did, but I couldn't take them. Do you understand, Angela? I just couldn't take them. You're in a tight spot, Kemp, she said softly. Her words enraged him. She shouldn't have said that. She had no right to. He managed to stop before the words erupted. She was right. Not just because she had offered him $50. She was right because she knew it was true. No one else in the world felt for him the way she did. I can't write, Angela, no matter how hard I try. The machine's broken and the tapes are worn out. Most of them are torn and patched. What did you eat today? I drank beers with you, and then a little boca. That's not food. Go wash up, change, and we'll go down to grab something to eat. I have money for food. I know you do. Didn't you tell me you got an advance from Irving? Actually, it wasn't an advance. I know that, Kemp. What are we going to do with the alien? Nothing's going to happen to him, at least for the time we'll be eating. Staying with him won't help. You don't know how. I guess you're right. I am. Come on, go wash that dirty face of yours. Don't forget your ears. The only customer at Bright Star was Jasper Hansen. The two sat at his table. Jasper was just finishing a plate of sauerkraut and pork knuckles, which he scandalously drowned in wine. Where is everyone else? Angela asked. At a party, Jasper replied. Someone sold a book. Do we know him? No. The important thing is that he sold a book. When someone throws a party over that, you can show up uninvited. I didn't know about this. Neither did the others. But someone showed up at the door, announced the news, and everyone followed him. Everyone except me. I don't have time for parties. I've got a lot of work. Is the party with food? Angela asked. Yes. That's something I don't understand. We sit here, respected and decent craftsmen, and suddenly it turns out that each of us is willing to break his legs just to get a free sandwich and drink. Times are tough, said Hart. Not for me, said Jasper. I'm working nonstop. Work alone doesn't solve the fundamental problems. Jasper thoughtfully grabbed his chin. So what solves them then? He asked. Inspiration? Dedication? Or maybe genius? You tell me. We're mechanics, man. We work with machines and tapes. We took this up 200 years ago. We introduced such mechanization that even people with no talent started producing stories and full books. We've got work ahead of us. We're in the business of producing goods for the whole damn galaxy. We keep readers on edge about what will happen next with Annie, the girl with slit eyes, the queen of distant space. We kill her lover, resurrect him, then kill him again and again. Jasper took the evening newspaper, unfolded it, and punched it with his fist. Do you see this? He asked. They've called it a classic. They guarantee that it only produces classics. Hart looked at the newspaper and saw the majestic fabricator he had examined earlier. The advertisement occupied the whole middle part of the page. At this rate, to write, you'll only need a lot of money, said Jasper. You buy a machine like this, tell it to produce a story, press a button or a lever, or just kick it, and it will spit out a story that won't miss a single comma. Back in the day, you could buy a simple second hand machine for $100, he continued, and still produce quite a lot of stuff. Not great stuff, but sellable. Today, all you need is an expensive machine, an expensive camera, and a lot of expensive film and tapes. One day, humanity will fall victim to its own cleverness. Humankind will be so mechanized that there will be room only for the machines, not the people. "But you manage," said Angela. "I manage because I'm constantly fixing my machine. I don't leave it alone. My room is half an office, half a workshop. I already know almost as much about electronics as I do about writing." Blake appeared. "What will you order?" He growled. "I've already eaten," replied Angela. "Just a beer for me." "And you?" Blake turned to Hart. "For me, what Jasper's eating. No wine. I don't give things on credit," said Blake. "Who wants anything on credit from you? Do you want me to pay before you bring me my food?" "No. Immediately after I bring it. One day we'll hit the limit." Jasper continued. "There can't be no limit, and I think we've come close. Labor can only be mechanized up to a certain point. Human endeavors can only be transferred to intelligent machines for certain activities. 200 years ago, do you think anyone imagined that writing prose would be reduced to simple mechanics? Do you think anyone imagined, 200 years ago, that Earth would entirely devote itself to producing literature?" Hart added, "But that's exactly what happened." "Well, there are factories producing the machines we need, lumberjacks cutting down forests to produce paper, and farmers producing food. There are many other professions essential for the existence of a civilization. Still, today, Earth is almost exclusively involved in the production of a huge amount of literature for export. This comes from a unique trait of ours," said Jasper. "A trait from which, unbelievably, we benefit. We're simply the only liars in the entire galaxy. In this whole star swarm, where truth is perceived as a constant, we're the only exception." "The way you put it, it sounds awful," objected Angela. "I suppose it does, but it's true. We could have become great merchants and deceived everyone until they caught on. We could have used our talent for lying in all sorts of endeavors and gotten away with it. Instead, we took the only safe route. We turned our skill of lying into a virtue. Now we can lie to our heart's content and have others pay us for the lies. Except for Earth, no one anywhere has even tried to create a plot or offer some moral lesson, even for fun. No one's tried, because that would be a lie, and the only liars in this starry universe are us." Blake brought the beer and the pork knuckle. Hart immediately paid him. "I've got $25 left," said Hart. "Do you have any cake?" "Apple cake." "Here," Hart said to Blake. "I'm paying you in advance." "First, lies were told orally," Jasper continued. "Then they were written on paper, and now they're produced by machines. But this can't be the limit. Surely there's still more to be done. There must be something else, something better. At some point, the next step will have to be made." "I'm ready for anything," Hart said. "I'm even ready to start writing by hand, as long as I can sell something." "Stop it!" Angela interrupted him angrily. "One shouldn't joke about such things. Between the three of us, fine, but if I hear you say that in front of... All right, all right. Sorry. Hart waved his hand. On the other hand, this skill is proof of human intelligence, Jasper continued, of the adaptability and resourcefulness of the human race. It's a somewhat ridiculous application of big business methods in a field that has long been considered a strictly individual pursuit. But it worked. I'm sure that one day books will be made on an assembly line, with factories producing prose working in 2 shifts. No, Jasper, you're wrong here, Angela objected. Even if it's mechanized, writing is still the most solitary activity on Earth. You're right, Jasper agreed. But I don't mind solitude. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it is. This is really a nasty way to make a living, Angela said, with a strange bitterness in her voice. What's the point of what we do, really? You give people happiness, assuming that some of our readers are actually people. You provide them with entertainment and noble ideals. Even here, there are some. No, Hart said, it's something more significant than entertainment and great ideals. It's the most innocent and, at the same time, the most dangerous propaganda in all human history. Ancient writers, those before the era of the first space flights, praised adventure and the conquest of galaxies, and in my opinion, they were right, but they couldn't foresee how we would accomplish it. We did it with books, not warships. We discussed the entire galaxy with a constant flow of human thoughts. Our words reach farther places than our spaceships. That's exactly what I wanted to point out, Jasper said solemnly. That's the essence of the matter. But if we want to tell the galaxy something, it has to be a human story. If we're going to sell it, it has to be human merchandise. How can it remain human when we've transferred its production to machines? But they're human machines, Angela objected. A machine can't be human. Machines are universal. They can be human, coffee, Aldebaran, draconian, and whatnot. And that's not all. We allow machines to set the standards. The only virtue of mechanics is that it offers stereotypes. And a stereotype is deadly when it comes to literature. The cliché never changes. It keeps the same old plot under various disguises. It may not matter much right now for the races reading our books, since they still don't have anything resembling a critical approach. But we can't be indifferent to this. We're supposed to take some pride in our craft. That's the problem with machines. They destroy our pride. Writing used to be an art. It's no longer. Literature is now produced by machines, just like chairs, for example. A chair may be comfortable, but that doesn't make it a work of art. And the door noisily opened, and the sound of human footsteps was heard. The green shirt had entered the pub. Behind him, his coffee-colored companions grinned ominously. The green shirt headed toward them, arms wide open. He stopped next to Hart and threw an enormous arm around his shoulder. "Do you remember me?" he asked slowly, carefully pronouncing the words in English. Of course, Hart swallowed. I remember you, of course. This is Miss Merritt and Mr. Hanson. I'm very happy, I assure you, the green shirt said precisely and gallantly. Please join us, Jasper invited him. Thank you. The green shirt accepted and settled into a chair. His necklace jingled merrily. One of the other colored beings shouted something in a rapid alien language. The green shirt gave a short reply and gestured toward the door. The rest of the colored beings exited. He's worried, explained the green shirt. We'll be late. What was his name? We'll delay the ship's departure. They can't leave without us. I told him not to worry. The captain won't regret the delay once he sees what we're bringing. He bent down and gave Hart a friendly pat on the knee. I've been looking for you, he said, under tree and stone. Who's this joker? Jasper asked. What does joker mean? The green shirt asked. A way of expressing respect, Hart quickly assured him. Ah, thank you, said the green shirt. Are you the one writing the stories? We all write stories. But you write them the best, don't you? I wouldn't say that. You see, aren't you the one who writes those terrifying stories? The ones with lots of shooting in them. Yes, I admit, I have those flaws. The green shirt seemed like someone who wanted to apologize. If I'd known, we wouldn't have kicked you out of the pub. We were just having fun. We didn't know you were the one writing the stories. When we found out who you were, we tried to find you. But you ran away and hid. What's going on here? Angela asked. The green shirt motioned for Blake to come closer. Bring drinks for everyone, he shouted. Everyone here is my friend. Bring the best drinks. The best I have is Irish whiskey. Blake replied coldly. It's $1 a glass. I've got money, said the green shirt. Bring whatever you need and I'll pay you in cash. I've got a surprise for you, my friend, he then said to Hart. We really love the Boom Boom authors. We never miss reading their stories. They really lift our spirits. Jasper was about to choke with laughter. The green shirt looked at him surprised and furrowed his brows. It's out of pleasure, Hart quickly explained. He really loves Irish whiskey. Wonderful, the green shirt beamed. Drink as much as you want. I'm paying. This is, what was it called? On my tab. Blake brought the drinks and the green shirt paid for them. Bring the container too, he said. The container? He means the bottle. It costs $20, Blake said. Here you go, the green shirt said, handing him the money. They took a sip, and the green shirt turned to Hart. The surprise is that you're coming with us. You mean on the ship. On our planet, we've never seen a living writer. You'll have a good time. You'll write for us. How should I put this? Hart began. I'm not sure if... You tried to take a photo. The pub man explained everything to us. He said it's against the law. He said that if we complain, there'll be big trouble. Don't let that big hyena blackmail you. Kemp, Angela protested. We'll pay the fine." "We won't complain," said the green shirt gently. "We'll just clean up this damn pub with you." Blake brought the bottle and placed it in the center of the table. The green shirt took it and filled the glasses to the top. "Drink," he said, setting a good personal example. Then he filled his glass again. Hart began to swirl his glass with his fingers. "There must be a way to get out of this mess," he thought. It was really absurd for a noisy barbarian from distant suns to walk into a bar and order someone to come with him. It didn't make sense to start a fight, especially with 10 or 11 Kafians waiting at the entrance of the pub. "Now let me explain," the green shirt began. "Let me explain it well, so you can understand me." Jasper Hansen helped him. "Thank you, Mr. Hansen. So you'll understand me. Just recently, we started importing stories. Many other races have been importing them for a long time, but for us they are something new and wonderful. This, how do you say it here? This drives us crazy. We buy many things from other stars, useful things that can be seen, held in the hand, and used. But from you, we import journeys to distant places, accomplishing great deeds, and giving birth to great thoughts." Then he filled the glasses again. "Do you understand me?" asked the green shirt. The three of them nodded affirmatively. "Now, let's go." Hart slowly stood up. "Kemp, you shouldn't do this," Angela cried out. "You be quiet." The green shirt snapped at her. Hart stepped out into the street. The other Kafians emerged from the dark side alleys and surrounded him. "Let's go," the green shirt said happily. "We'll have a great time on Calf." Halfway to the river, Hart stopped. "I can't," he said. "Can't what?" the green shirt asked, nudging him forward. "You got the impression that I'm the one you need," Hart said. "I did it because I really wanted to see your planet. But that wouldn't be honest. I'm not the one you need. You write the boom stories, right? You make the wild stuff." "Yes, but not the best ones. Mine aren't like those you believe in wholeheartedly. There's another guy who writes better. Can you tell us where to find the person we need?" asked the green shirt. "Of course. It's the other guy who was sitting at the table with us. The one who got so excited when you ordered whiskey for him. Mr. Hansen, that's him. Does he write the good boom stories? Even better than me. He's a genius." The green shirt was filled with gratitude. In a surge of goodwill, he pressed Hart strongly to his side. "You're an honest man," he said. "You're a good man. I'm glad you told us the truth." Somewhere high up, a window noisily opened, and a man's head appeared. "If you two don't shut up, I'll call the police," the man shouted. "Looks like we're disturbing his peace," the green shirt sighed. "You have strange laws here." The window slammed shut again. The green shirt placed a friendly hand on Hart's shoulder. "We really love adventure stories," he said seriously. "We want the best ones. Thank you. Now we'll look for Mr. Hansen. He let go of him and strode back down the street, followed by his companions. Hart waited at the corner until they disappeared from sight, took a deep breath, and then slowly exhaled. It had all turned out to be very easy. You just had to find the right approach. In fact, it was Jasper who had suggested it to him. Everywhere, truth is perceived as a constant, and we're the only exception. That's exactly what he had said earlier. It's true that Hart had played a dirty trick on Jasper, but he had planned to take a break somewhere anyway. Hadn't he? The journey would really be worthwhile. Jasper had refused to lend him his machine and had laughed derisively when the green shirt asked Hart if he was the one who wrote the good boom stories. Jasper Hansen had asked for what was coming to him. On top of everything, he never missed locking the door to his room, showing offensive distrust toward his fellow writers. Hart quickly walked in the opposite direction. He was going home, but not just yet. Later, when things calmed down. Early in the morning, Hart climbed the stairs to the 7th floor and headed toward Hansen's room. As usual, the door was locked. He took a piece of steel wire he had found on the street from his pocket and started fiddling with the lock. After a few seconds, it clicked, and the door opened. The fabulator was standing in the corner, shining an eye, catching. Jasper had reprogrammed it. If an unknown person used it, they could get shocked or even killed. Nonsense. The man had just been looking for a way to explain his selfishness. 2 weeks, Hart told himself. If he mobilized, he could work with it for 2 full weeks without raising any suspicion. It would be enough to say he was using it with Jasper's permission if anyone asked questions. As far as Hart understood people, Jasper was unlikely to return anytime soon, and indeed he only needed 2 weeks. If he worked around the clock during that time, he could earn enough money for a new machine. He crossed the room, went to the fabulator, and pulled out the chair placed next to it. He sat down calmly and stroked the control panel with his hand. The machine was good. It produced a lot of output and high quality at that. Lately, Jasper had been selling quite a bit of merchandise. Old, but reliable, Hart said to himself. He touched the switch and then pressed it. Nothing happened. Puzzled, he returned it to the previous position and pressed it again. Still nothing. He decided to check if it was plugged into the network properly. There was no outlet in the room. Shocked, Hart froze in the middle of the room. Jasper had said he'd upgraded it. Was it possible that he had upgraded it so brilliantly that it didn't use electricity? That was impossible, inconceivable. With trembling fingers, Hart opened the side panel and peered inside the machine. Inside there was complete chaos. Half of the bulbs were missing. The other half had burned out. The cables were cut in several places. The relay block was covered in dust. The metal parts were rusted. The whole machine was only good for scrap. Still trembling, he replaced the panel, turned around with a blank stare, and bumped into the table. He pressed himself against it and gripped it tightly to stop his hands from shaking, to bring some order to the maddening questions he had started asking himself. Jasper's machine had not been upgraded. It didn't work at all. No wonder he had locked his door. He had lived in mortal fear that someone might find out he wrote by hand, and now, despite the dirty trick he had played on a worthy friend, Hart was no better off than before. He was once again faced with the same huge, unsolvable problems. He had to make do with his own crappy machine. Maybe it would have been better if he had gone to CAF. He walked over to the door, paused for a moment, and looked back. He stared at Jasper's typewriter, sitting on the desk half buried in papers. Its owner had wanted to create the impression that he never used it. And yet, Jasper was selling. He was selling almost everything he wrote. He sold, despite working hunched over the desk on a typewriter, or even with a pencil in hand. He sold without ever resorting to the fabulator, which, though empty and useless, was always cleaned and polished. He sold, using it as a shield against all those who relied entirely on metal and the magic of its actions. First, lies were spoken aloud, then written on paper, and now they were produced by machines. And what will come next? He had asked, as though he had no doubt something new was about to appear. And indeed, what? Was the end of humanity approaching? Was it really going to be replaced by moving nodes, intelligent glass and metal, and ingenious electronics? For the sake of human dignity and the preservation of the human mind, something new had to emerge. Mechanics by themselves represented a dead end. It could only become smarter to a certain limit, reach a certain point. Jasper knew this, had discovered this truth, had given up his mechanical assistant, and started creating by hand again. It was enough for a craftwork to acquire economic value for people to begin mass producing it. Once, furniture was made with love by craftsmen who knew they were creating works of art that would be passed down with pride from generation to generation. Then came the machines, churning out functional furniture, items that had no historical value and that people couldn't be proud of. The same had happened with writing. It no longer evoked any pride. It had stopped being an art and had become a commodity. What should a person do? What could he do? Lock his door like Jasper? Spend long hours alone with himself? And torture himself day and night because he wasn't like the others? Hart left the room with a tormented look. He waited to hear the click of the latch. Then he slowly started climbing the stairs. The alien creature, the blanket with a face, was still lying on the bed, but now its eyes were open, and it stared at Hart as he entered the room. He stopped by the door and looked around the cold room. It exuded poverty and boredom, which almost seemed to have a smell. Hart was hungry and lonely, his heart tight, and on top of everything, it seemed like the fabulator in the corner was mocking him. Through the open window, the sound of an engine from a departing spaceship could be heard, harmonizing with the siren of a tugboat pulling a ship toward the dock. He dragged himself over to the bed. "Move over," he said to the wide-eyed alien creature, and settled down next to it. He turned his back on it, curled up, and began to think. Ooh, He was right where he had started yesterday. There was no film to complete Irving's order. He could only rely on his primitive machine. There was no camera either, and he wondered if anyone would lend him theirs. In fact, it hardly seemed worth searching for a camera, since he had no money to pay his actor. He dared not attempt to sneak a shot of anyone again. It wasn't worth getting arrested for 3 or 4 years just for that. "Why love adventures?" said the green shirt. Thanks to the stories, we travel to distant places. The green shirt loved boom, boom, and adventures. Other races preferred different kinds of prose, but all of them saw Earth's strange export as a new magical world. They were fascinated by the limits of reason or the limits of feelings. The difference was not significant. Angela had said she didn't like this way of earning a living. She probably didn't mean it. All writers sometimes said the same thing. Throughout time, men and women from all professions must have at one point said they didn't like how they made their living. It was even possible they believed it at that moment, but at other times they knew it wasn't true because their work was important. And writing was important, incredibly important, not so much because it takes you to distant places, but because it scattered the seeds of earth, seeds of earthly thought and logic, among billions of stars. They're out there, waiting for the stories that I'll never write for them. Hart thought to himself. He would try to do that, of course, despite all the difficulties. He could even try to do what Jasper did, write by hand, filled with a sense of shame. To feel inadequate out of his own time, trembling with horror that his secret would eventually be revealed, perhaps by the style, as someone would realize the text wasn't machine-made. Jasper, of course, was wrong. The problem wasn't the fabulator or the principle of mechanical writing itself. The problem was with Jasper himself, a mental deviation that turned him into a rebel, a frightened, hiding rebel who locked the door to his room, kept his fabulator in perfect condition, and carefully surrounded his typewriter with trash to prevent anyone from suspecting it was being used. Hart felt better, and it even seemed he wasn't as hungry anymore. Suddenly, he remembered a distant place, one of those places that the green shirt had liked so much. There was a grove there through which a stream flowed. The entire area exuded peace and calm, and with its grandeur, it brought him close to eternity. The sound of birdsong filled the air, and the smell of the water running along the mossy banks was as strong as the scent of spices. Hart walked through the forest, and the dense canopies of the trees made him feel as if he were in a Gothic cathedral. As he walked, his mind created words, words arranged so precisely and carefully that no one would misunderstand what he wanted to say. Everyone would not only see what he saw, but also feel the sounds and smells, experience the eternity that filled everything here. Even in his exaltation, he felt that the green Gothic arch hid danger. His intuition told him he had to leave. For a moment, he tried to remember how he had ended up in this place, but he couldn't. It seemed to him that even though He had only known the forest for a second or two. He had walked under its sunlit green canopy for hours or days before. He felt an itch in his throat and raised his hand to scratch it. He touched something small and warm, which made him jump out of bed. His hand tightened around the creature's neck. He was about to rip it off his chest when he suddenly remembered the strange circumstances he had tried to recall the previous evening. He relaxed his grip. He stood by the bed, feeling the comfort of his familiar room and the warmth of the blanket, like creature that had wrapped itself around his back, shoulders, and neck. He was neither hungry nor tired, and the fatigue he had felt earlier seemed to have disappeared. He wasn't anxious either, which was strange since he was almost always troubled by something. 12 hours ago, he had been on the street with the blanket, like creature in his hands, trying to extract an explanation for the strange feeling he had experienced. The feeling that he had read or heard about the groaning creature somewhere. Now, with it on his back, warming his throat, he knew. He crossed the room, wrapped in the creature, and pulled out an old, tattered book from a long shelf nearly 2 meters long. It was worn and polished from the many hands that had passed through it, and nearly slipped from his palm when he tried to flip it to read the title. Fragments of Lost Writings. He flipped the book and began to skim through it. He already knew where to look for what he needed. He clearly remembered where he had read about the creature that was now on his back. He quickly found the pages he was looking for. In fact, they were just a few surviving passages from an old and long lost story. He quickly browsed through the first 2 pages and found what he needed. A's ambitious plants. The living blankets waited, probably having only vague ideas of what they were waiting for. When humans arrived, their endless wait ended. The living blankets made a deal with them. Later, it was found that the result of the deal was the greatest contribution in the history of galaxy exploration. Say, thought Hart? For a long time, humans have been confident that they would explore the galaxy, establish contact with its inhabitants, and spread the virtues of Earth across all visited planets. Once a person draped themselves with a living blanket, they no longer had to think about their sustenance, as the creature had the strange property of absorbing energy and converting it into food for its host's body. In fact, it became a second body, a body that, with parental care, protected its host, maintaining their metabolism even in the harshest alien environments, neutralizing any infections, and playing the roles of mother, cook, and family doctor. As repayment, the blanket became a sort of twin to its host. Shedding its dull plant existence, it transformed into a human-like being, sharing its host's feelings and thoughts. It lived a life it would never have known if left to itself. The blankets decided to repay this gift. They repaid it with their stories and imagination. It could create anything, literally anything. For hours, they created stories to gift their hosts, transforming into shields to protect them from boredom and loneliness. The text continued, but Hart had seen enough. He noticed the excerpt's title, Unknown Author, approx. 1956. Was this written 600 years ago? How could anyone possibly know this? It couldn't be. The author must have invented it all and guessed the truth. The vision of some unknown ancient science fiction writer had come true. In the grove, a magnificent creature had appeared. It was not humanoid, but neither was it a monster. It was something never before seen by human eyes. Despite its beauty, it posed a deadly threat, and a person had to flee from it. He tried to run and felt that he was in the middle of the room. Enough, he said to the blanket. Let's stop here. We'll continue later. Later, we'll continue and write a story. We might visit many other places and describe them in stories too. For those, I won't need a fabulator anymore, as I will be able to recreate the beauty and grandeur of what I've seen and assemble it better than any machine, as if I had been there and personally experienced something. No one else can describe it that way. Here it is. Here is the answer to the question Jasper had asked while sitting at the table in the Bright Star Bar. What is the next step? The next step was a symbiosis between a human and an alien being, a step foreseen centuries ago by a man whose name had long been forgotten. Hart thought that God himself had helped him, as it still seemed unbelievable that the answer lay in the wailing creature found in the space between an apartment block and a printing house. But that no longer mattered. What mattered was that he had found it and brought it home, even without knowing why, only to later marvel at his own action. What mattered was that this action was now going to pay off. He heard footsteps on the staircase approaching his door. Alarmed by their speed, he frantically pulled the blanket off his shoulders and searched for a place to hide it. The drawer, of course. He opened the bottom drawer and stuffed the blanket inside, paying no attention to its slight resistance. Just as he kicked the drawer shut, Angela burst into the room. She was furious. That was a very dirty trick, she said. Jasper is in a heap of trouble now. Hart looked at her in surprise. Trouble? You mean he didn't leave for Calf? He's hiding in the basement now. Blake told me. I went down to talk to him. So he managed to escape. Hart seemed quite unsettled by the news. Yes, he told them they didn't need a human at all, but a machine. And he described that shiny marvel, the classic model, sitting in the showroom downtown. And what did they steal it? If they had stolen it, that would have been fine. But they botched the whole thing. They smashed the display window and triggered the alarm. Every cop in the city was there in seconds. And Jasper did he. Jasper went with them to show them the store. Hart's face regained some color. So Jasper is hiding from the police now. The worst part is, he doesn't even know if he's supposed to be hiding or not. He has no idea if the cops saw him. He's hiding because he's afraid the police might have caught one of the Kaffians and learned the whole story from him. And if that happens, Kemp Hart, you'll have a lot of explaining to do. Me? But I haven't done anything. Nothing. except that you told them Jasper was exactly what they needed. By the way, how did they fall for it so quickly? Very easily. Don't you remember what Jasper said? Only we humans lie. Everyone else tells the truth. Until they wise up, they'll believe every word we say. You see? Everyone else speaks only the truth, so shut up, please! Angela interrupted impatiently. Then she scanned the room. And that thing that looked like a blanket, where is it? It's gone. Must have run away. When I got home, it was already gone. Do you have any idea what it was? Hart shook his head. Maybe it's for the best that it's gone, he said. It made me feel uneasy. You and the doctor are unbelievable. The whole neighborhood has gone mad. The doctor is dead drunk under a tree in the park, and an alien is guarding him. Won't let anyone near him. Watches over him like he's adopted him. Maybe one of the pink elephants from the doctor's drunken dreams came to life. You know, dreams often. It's not an elephant, and it's not pink. It has webbed feet that seem too big for it and long, thin legs. Looks a bit like a spider, and its whole skin is covered in warts. Its head is triangular, and it has 6 horns. Your blood runs cold just looking at it. Hart shuddered for a moment. Ordinary aliens were acceptable, but something like that. What does it want from the doctor? No one knows. It doesn't want to talk. Maybe it can't. You know very well that all aliens can talk, that they know our language well enough for us to communicate. If they didn't, they wouldn't come here. Sounds logical, said Hart. Maybe it just decided to relax a little with the help of alcohol. All it needs to do is sit near the doctor. Sometimes your sense of humor is absolutely disgusting. Yes, just like writing books by hand. Yes, exactly like writing books by hand. You know as well as I do that it's not acceptable to talk about handwriting books in public. It's like eating with your fingers, burping, or walking around naked in public. All right, I won't mention it again. After she left, Hart sat down and began to assess the situation. In many ways, it would resemble Jasper's situation, but he didn't mind writing as beautifully as Jasper did. First, he needed to start locking his door. He tried to remember where the key was. He had never used it, so now he would have to rummage through his desk to find it. If he couldn't, he'd have to order a new one. He couldn't risk someone unexpectedly catching him writing by hand or with the blanket over his shoulders. Or maybe it would be better to move somewhere else so he wouldn't have to explain why he had suddenly started locking his door. That option didn't appeal to him at all. As miserable as his apartment was, he had gotten used to it and saw it as his home. Maybe after he started selling his works, he should talk to Angela and invite her to move somewhere else with him. Angela was a sweet girl, but you couldn't ask someone to move in with you when you were still wondering where to find money for your next meal. Actually, even if he didn't manage to sell anything, from now on, he wouldn't have to worry about food anymore. Was the blanket capable of feeding 2 people? How would he explain all of this to Angela? How had that man, way back in 1956, imagined something like this? How many other crazy ideas, born from torturous mental effort and empty whiskey bottles, could turn into reality? A dream, an ideal, a glimpse of the future. It didn't matter which one it was, because a person had thought of it, and it had become real. How many other things, imagined in the past or the future, would become reality? That thought scared him. Traveling to distant places, the unleashing of imagination, the impact of the written word, and the thoughts it reflected. He had said that they were more powerful than a battleship, and he had been right. He got up, crossed the room, and stood in front of the fabricator. It grinned at him. Hart stuck out his tongue at it. "You're done for," he said to it. He heard a rustling behind him and quickly turned around. The blanket had managed to slip out of the drawer and was heading toward the door, standing up on the lower part of its airy body. Its movements were strange, like those of a wounded seal. "Hey, you! Where do you think you're going?" Hart shouted and tried to grab it. Too late. A creature, he couldn't think of another word for it, stood in the doorway. The blanket nimbly climbed up its body and wrapped around its neck. "I lose. You good. You keep safe." "I grateful," the creature hissed. Hart was stunned. The creature was something else. It looked just like the one Angela had seen guarding the doctor, only maybe a little uglier. It had webbed feet, perhaps 3 times larger than they should have been for its size, making it look like it was walking on snowshoes. Its tail was curled in a rather ungraceful way, reaching halfway up its back. Its head resembled a melon with a triangular face drawn on it. 6 horns stuck out from its head, each with an eye at the tip. The monstrous being reached into a pocket that seemed to be part of its body and pulled out a thick bundle of banknotes. "Apologies for the small reward." It chirped and handed the bundle to Hart. Hart absent-mindedly took it. "We leave now," the creature said. "We keep warm feelings for you." It really was about to leave, but when it heard Hart's protest, it stopped. "Yes, good sir. This blanket I found. What can you tell me about it?" "We make." "But it's alive, and—" The thing gave him a sinister smile. "You very smart people. You invented it." "Long ago." "You mean a story?"
Yes.
"We read it. We make it. Very good idea. So you really can—" "We biologists. We, as you say, bioengineers." The creature turned and started down the hallway. "Hey,
Wait! Just a minute!"
please." Hart began to shout. The creature had already gained speed and didn't stop. Hart ran after it. When he reached the staircase and looked down, it was already gone. He tried to follow, taking the steps 3 at a time, ignoring any sense of safety. He couldn't find it anywhere. When he stepped out onto the street, he looked around in all directions, but there was no sign of it. It had disappeared. He reached into his pocket and absent-mindedly felt the bundle of banknotes. He pulled it out and saw that it was thicker than he had initially thought. He removed the rubber band and examined a few of the banknotes at random. Their value, written on them in galactic credit units, was so large that it stunned him. He quickly checked the rest of the notes and saw that their value was the same. His breath caught in shock as he examined them again. Yes, he hadn't made a mistake. The value of all of them was indeed the same. He did some quick mental calculations and couldn't believe it. He repeated the calculation, this time converting to credit units. One galactic credit unit was worth about 5 Earth dollars. He had seen galactic credit units before, but he had never held even one in his hands. This currency was used in intergalactic trade, mostly handled by banking circles and rarely used in daily transactions. He looked at the banknotes in his hand and found them incredibly beautiful. The creature must have valued the blanket highly to give him such a fantastic sum just for taking care of it, he thought. Though, in reality, he shouldn't have been surprised. Different planets had different standards of living, and the fortune Hart now held in his hands might have been just pocket change for the blanket's owner. To his surprise, Hart wasn't as excited or happy as he should have been. All he could think about was that he had lost the blanket. He put the banknotes back in his pocket and headed toward the nearby park. The doctor, now awake, had moved to a bench under a tree. Hart sat down beside him. "How are you feeling, doctor?" he asked. "I'm fine, my boy," the old man replied. "Have you seen an alien that looks like a spider on snowshoes? One of them was just here with me. I found him when I woke up. He was interested in that thing you discovered. And you told him where it was, didn't you?" "Of course." "Why wouldn't I? He said he was looking for it. I figured you'd be happy to get rid of it." The two of them sat in silence for a while. Then, suddenly, Hart asked a question. "Doctor, what would you do if you suddenly won about $1 billion? "Me, I'd drink myself to death immediately," the doctor said without hesitation. "Yes, sir. I'd drink myself to death, but in style, not with the garbage they sell in this part of town." Hart decided that nothing could surprise him any more. The doctor would drink himself to death. Angela would devote her time to art galleries and fashion salons. Jasper would probably buy a house in the mountains to stay away from people. And me, Hart thought, what would I do with $1 billion? Give or take $1 million? Yesterday, last night, and even 2 hours ago, he was ready to sell his soul for a classic fabricator. Now, however, it seemed old-fashioned and pointless. He had already realized that there was a better way to write, through symbiosis, by combining human abilities with those of an alien biological structure. He remembered the forest, its gothic trees, and the scent of eternity, and despite the bright sunlight, he shuddered at the memory of the beautiful creature that had appeared among the trees. That was obviously the best way to write, to experience something personally and then describe it firsthand. But he had given up the blanket and had no idea how to get another one. He also had no clue how to capture one, even if he somehow found himself on the planet where they were produced. An alien biological creation and yet not entirely alien, since it had first appeared in the imagination of an unknown earthling 6 centuries ago. In the mind of someone who wrote as Jasper did today, bent over a desk, writing one word at a time as they emerged from his mind, without a fabricator, without films or reels, without any kind of device. And yet, this unknown person had managed to cross the nebulae of space and time and reach another intelligence. Thanks to this, the blanket of life had truly come to life, just as only a human could have imagined it. Was this the true greatness of the human race? The ability to imagine things that eventually became reality? If that was the case, could humanity afford to delegate its greatness to spinning gears and wheels, to electronic circuits and machines? "Do you happen to have $1?" the doctor asked.
No,
Hart said. "I don't have exactly $1. You're just like us," the doctor said. "Talking about billions, yet you don't have a single cent in your pocket." Jasper was a rebel, but being one wasn't worth it. All rebels ended up with bloody noses and cracked heads. "A single dollar would really help me out," the doctor continued. Neither Jasper Hansen had gained anything from his rebellion, nor would the others, who would also eventually be forced to lock their doors and polish their idol fabricators, making sure no random visitor found out what they were really up to. Rebellion doesn't suit me, Kemphart thought. And why should he become a rebel when he could gain fame automatically and literally overnight by staying a conformist? He reached into his pocket and felt the thick wad of banknotes again. He knew that now he was going downtown to buy the magnificent machine. In fact, with this money, he could buy an entire warehouse full of such machines. "Yes, sir," the doctor said, returning to the question of the $1 billion. "That would be a pleasant death, a truly pleasant death." When Hart arrived in front of the store window, a few workers were replacing the glass. He ignored them and walked inside. The familiar salesman materialized next to him once again. But this time he wasn't beaming with happiness. Instead, he looked serious, maybe even a little offended. "I assume you've come to order the classic model, sir." "You guessed right," Hart replied and pulled out the wad of cash from his pocket. The salesman was well trained. He hesitated only for a second before regaining his composure in record time. "Excellent," he said. "I knew you'd be back. I even told some of my colleagues that we'd be seeing you here again soon." "I bet you did," Hart thought. "I assume that since I'm paying in cash, you might consider adding some extra films and reels." "Of course, sir. I'll do everything in my power." Hart counted out 25,000 and put the rest of the banknotes back in his pocket. "Please have a seat," the salesman invited. "I'll be back as soon as I finish processing the paperwork for the delivery and warranty." "Don't worry," Hart said, savoring every moment of the experience. He sank into a chair and started planning his future. First, he needed to move into a better apartment. Then, he would invite the whole gang for dinner and rub Jasper's nose in it. Of course, that was assuming Jasper hadn't already been thrown in jail. Hart smiled, picturing Jasper hiding in the basement of the Bright Star bar. Later this afternoon, he'd go see Irving return the $20 loan and explain why he no longer had time to fulfill his request. Not that he didn't want to help Irving, but it would be sacrilegious to use the talent of the classic to write the trash Irving needed. He heard hurried footsteps, got up, turned around, and smiled at the salesman. But the salesman wasn't smiling. He looked like a man who had just suffered a terrible shock. "Sir," the salesman nearly choked, trying to maintain his professional demeanor. "Sir,
This money!
you shouldn't be mocking us like this, young man." "What's wrong with the money?" Hart protested. "These are galactic credit units."
These are toy money!
The salesman roared. "Play money from the Draconian Federation. Look, it's written right here."
In big letters?
He handed the money back to Hart.
Get out of here!
"Please." "Are you sure?" "That can't be right. You must be mistaken. Our cashier said so. He's an expert, has handled all kinds of currencies. And if he says it's fake, then it's fake." "But you saw them and didn't notice anything unusual."
Because I don't read Draconian, but the cashier does! Damn alien!
Hart shouted in a sudden fit of rage.
If I ever catch him!
The salesman softened a little. "You shouldn't trust aliens, sir. They're big-time swindlers."
Get out of my way! Hart yelled. I have to find him!
The officer at the Bureau of Alien Affairs couldn't help him. "We're not aware of any species matching your description. Do you happen to have a photo?" "No," Hart said. "I don't have a photo." The man started arranging the catalogs he had just reviewed. Of course, the fact that it's not in the catalogs doesn't necessarily mean anything. We don't claim to know all the existing civilizations. There are too many, and new ones are discovered every day. Maybe you should check at the spaceport. Someone there might have seen your alien. I already did. No one knows anything there either. I know he was on Earth and that he might have already left. But no one remembers him. Or maybe they do, but they don't want to tell me." "All these aliens are in on it," the clerk said. "They never say anything." He continued arranging his catalogs. The end of the workday was approaching, and it was clear he wanted to leave as soon as possible. He decided to make a joke. "You could go into space and try to find him there." "I just might," Hart replied and walked out, slamming the door behind him. "Go into space and look for him." Very funny. Search through 1,000,000 stars within 10,000 light years. And when you find the alien, tell him you want your blanket back and wait for him to laugh in your face. After visiting 1,000,000 stars over 10,000 years of travel, you wouldn't need a blanket anymore, because you would have experienced everything firsthand, met your heroes, and encountered 1,000,000 different landscapes. You wouldn't need any fabricators, tapes, or films. The words would scream in your brain, demanding to be let out, and then they would pulse at your fingertips, eager to be written. Give some fool fresh out of the woods a stack of play money in exchange for something worth $1 million. The fool will only realize it when he tries to spend it. Then hide somewhere and laugh yourself to tears at the thought that he stands far below you. Who said only humans lie? Drape a blanket over your shoulders and send your ships to Earth to collect its literary junk. The funny part is that it never even occurs to you that the very thing resting on your shoulders could end Earth's monopoly on prose production. Now I'm the one who finds this amusing. Heart thought. Once I find you, I'll pay you back in kind. Angela climbed the stairs with an offer of truce. She placed a small pot on the table. I brought you soup, she said. You know I'm good at making soup. Thank you, Angela. I forgot to eat today. What's with the backpack, Kemp? Are you going to the mountains? No. I decided to take a little break. You never mentioned this before. I just made the decision a moment ago. I'm sorry I was harsh with you. Everything turned out fine. The green shirt and his gang managed to escape, so Jasper can come out of the basement. He already did, and he's very angry at you. That doesn't bother me. He's not my friend. Angela sat down in a chair, watching as he packed his bag. Where are you going, Kemp? I need to find an alien. Here, in the city. Kemp, you'll never find him. Not in the city. I have to look elsewhere. But there aren't any aliens nearby? Exactly. You're insane! Angela shouted. You can't do this, Kemp! I won't let you! How will you live? What will you do? I'll write. Write, but you can't write. Not without a fabricator. I'll write by hand. I'll write by hand. No matter how improper it seems to you. I'll write by hand because I'll know what I'm writing about. It will be in my blood, at my fingertips. I'll know its scent, its color, its taste. She jumped from her chair and started hitting him in the chest with her small fists. That's disgusting! It's uncivilized! That's how they used to write. The millions of stories, the great ideas, the aphorisms you love to quote, all of them were written this way. And that's why they survived. Meanwhile, we've backed ourselves into a dead end. You'll come back. You'll realize you made a mistake and come back. Not until I find my alien. You're not looking for an alien. You're looking for something else. I can feel it. She turned and ran. He went back to packing his bag. When he was done, he sat down and ate the soup. Angela was right. She really did know how to make soup. She was right about something else, too. He wasn't really looking for an alien. He didn't need an alien, just like he didn't need a blanket or a fabricator. He took the pot, washed it, and carefully dried it. Then he placed it in the middle of the table so Angela would see it the moment she returned. After that, he grabbed his backpack and slowly walked up the stairs. He was already out on the street when he heard someone calling his name. It was Angela, running after him. He stopped and waited for her. I'm coming with you, Kemp. You don't know what you're saying. Life will be hard. Strange lands, strange people. We have no money. We do. We have $50. The same 50 I tried to lend you. That's all I have, and I know it won't last long. But at least we have that. You're not looking for an alien. I am. I'm looking for an alien too. It seems like we all are. He reached out and pulled her in roughly, held her close. Thank you, Angela, he said. Hand in hand, they headed toward the spaceport, waiting for a ship to take them to the stars.